Good morning, campers, and welcome to the first of 3 demos I'll be doing during our event today. The first one we're going to get started with is a demonstration of the new Creative Memories alphabet stamp kit system. And I chose to do this as a demo because I know a lot of you have stamps at home. I think a couple of you have even been stamping up advisors, consultants, and you know, by looking at our newly released stamp kit, you may get some ideas of how to use the stamps that you already have in your stash. For people who haven't done a lot of stamping, this is just a really good basic set to purchase and start to use, and can be a really quick way to add titles and words to your layouts. The kit itself is $38.50. It comes in this wonderful little box, and I've unboxed it, and you can see, actually these are upside down. You can see there are 3 sheets of letters, and these are also upside down. Letters and numbers and some little graphics that can help you add a little bit of spice to your layouts. So the way these stamps work, these are a little bit different than the stamps that I started using way back in the early 90s. All the stamps had wooden bases, and over time people realized how cumbersome they are to store, so a movement was made to move towards these acrylic stamps, or these are actually on rubber, that lets you store them on acetate sheets, and they certainly don't take up as much room. So the way you use these stamps is with an acrylic block, and one of the great things about the acrylic block that Creative Memories includes with this kit is that it has lines on it that makes lining up your letters and numbers and so forth very easy. So that's how you're going to use the letters. And then the other thing that they've included is a Versa-Magic archival chalk ink pad. Now these ink pads are good to use in your scrapbook pages. They're not going to, the ink is not going to destroy anything that you put on your page. And of course, you know, we have to remember that our refill pages are acid-free, buffered, lignin-free, so the buffering in them actually helps protect your photos. So I've actually stamped in my albums with other inks in the past and really haven't found any problem with doing that. But you know, Sam is being very, very careful about what ink they promote. The one thing I can tell you about this that you really need to be aware of is that it takes a little bit of time to dry. And here's a good example. I stamped this word C to show you, and because I didn't let it dry totally, I don't know if you can see how the A smeared just a little bit, but I don't know, I mean, if you were to stamp directly on your refill pages, you really would have to walk away from them for a while to make sure you don't have any smearing situation. I really feel like it's important to start with some kind of you know, separate piece of paper that if you make a mistake on, it's not a tragedy. You can just, you know, like throw it out and start again. And then you can cut this down to size, however. So this would be a really good way to really begin. So the way these work, and I'm just going to replicate the C stamp, C word again, is you're going to take your, well, before I get started, let me move these off, and let me tell you that whenever you stamp, it's really important to have a little bit of a give of the surface that you're going to be stamping on. This is my Creative Memories cutting mat. It's on one of our workshop tables, and I've never found these workshop tables to be very good for stamping because they have a little bit of give to them that doesn't seem to work with the stamps very well. The kind of give that I feel like you should have when you rubber stamp is using some kind of like a catalog or maybe a pad of paper, and then I always cover it so I'm not going to wreck the top of the magazine. So this is how I find my stamping is more successful. I also feel like whenever you're going to stamp, you really should think about, whenever you use new stamps, you really should always do some kind of a trial run through before you actually put them on the surface that you want to use in your scrapbook or on your card or whatever, because each stamp has a little bit of a different feel when you use it. And these particular stamps, when they're used on the acrylic block, they're a little wiggly. You have to get used to how you press down on the paper, how much pressure to put on the paper. So a little bit of experimentation before you actually set out to do your titles or your words for your scrapbooks layouts is really important. So the stamps come, like I said, in 3 sheets of like acetate, and you're going to pull off one of these sheets. The easiest one is the one that's not printed, and expose your stamps. And then you just are going to peel them off, and because of the nature of the material they're made out of, they're going to stick to the acrylic block. So I can put my S, I'm going to line it up with that bottom, one of the bottom lines, and I'm going to do an E. And remember, you're going to be doing your word backwards, because when you turn over the stamp to stamp it, you want it to be going in the right direction. And do my A stamp. Okay. So one of the things that I really think is helpful is on these acetate sheets, they actually have printed the letters and numbers. So you're going to store your stamps on these sheets, and it just makes returning them very easy and keeps them nice and neat, which is wonderful. So there I have my C letter stamps lined up on the acrylic block. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to open up our stamp pad. Now this stamp pad has two covers. One is that hard plastic cover, and then there's a little one inside that you're not supposed to throw out. This is really going to keep the integrity and the juiciness of your stamp pad going for the long haul. The best way to ink your stamps is not to put this acrylic block into the ink pad, but instead to pat your stamps with the ink pad this way. You have more control over where you're putting the ink, and you can keep it from getting really, really messy. I see I have a little bit of schmutz on there. I'm going to take that off. And what you want to make sure you're doing is you're getting the ink very nice and evenly spread on your stamps. All right, so we're going to get ready to stamp this on. This is just a piece of one of those product inserts that I'm using for all kinds of things now. And you can even line up the acrylic block edge to the edge of this piece of paper, and you're going to go directly down onto the paper. You're not going to wiggle it. You're going to use nice even pressure. You're even going to maybe press into the center part and then lift it up. And there you have, actually this is a much better image than the one that I did to show you earlier. So that's C. So I could cut this out, I could cut the individual letters out and arrange them on my layout however I want to do it. And you can continue to do longer titles or whatever. So to clean your stamp, and actually I'm going to clean them. Some of you might have this stamp cleaning system from Stampin' Up, which is awesome. You can certainly use that, and you use a little stamp cleaner and can rub it off. The other thing you can do if you don't have something like that is simply take a couple of pieces of paper towel. You can moisten it with water. I'm going to fold it over again so I don't make a mess. And you can clean your stamps off that way. This is not permanent in terms of, it's not going to stay on your stamp. Some of the inks that are out there do. And then once you have it cleaned off, you can put your letters back in place. Now one thing, a little technique I wanted to show you, another thing that you can do with your stamp is, say you want to do something a little bit more elaborate, and I'm just I need to do it this way because I'll get in trouble the other way. So I'm just going to stamp. I got some extra ink on there, so let's get that off. I'm going to stamp. Did that get covered? Sometimes you really want to look to make sure you got your stamp covered, because I mean, you can always stamp it over, but it's nice to get a good clean impression the first time. So I'm going to stamp this S. There it is. And then I can take this ancient circle punch. I hope they bring these back, because these are some basic things that anybody who scrapbooks, I hope I don't smear it. And you could, I don't like the way that's not being centered. You can center your letter over the punch, and you could do a series of circular punched letters, and that could be another way to do your title or to use a word. So you could do a series of these little circles or whatever shape that you'd like to punch out, and that could be another way to use it. So I feel like this is a really kind of fun way to add a little bit of a different craft technique to your scrapbooking. I think it's a good way to do titles fairly quickly. It gives you some versatility. You can use this block horizontally. You can always also use it vertically. And this whole stamp system would work with anything else you might have picked up along the way. I discovered that I have this little scrapbooking stamp set of clear stamps, another little alphabet stamp, and then some really adorable star and little critter stamp sets. So any of your acrylic stamps that you have at home, you can certainly use with the block and the ink system that CM provides. So I hope this is something that you might consider using in the future. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me after the demo. I have a history of rubber stamping that goes back to the early 90s. Most of you know that I have a whole nother room that's filled with stamps that are probably crying because I don't use them as much as I used to. But I've done just about every kind of stamping there is, so I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. So thanks so much for your attention, and keep on scrapping today. Take care.